Do you know what I like to do after I've witnessed the seventh worst day in the Dow in history?
I like to look at some baseball cards because nothing brings me down. Anytime something brings me down, just come into my card room and I look at some baseball cards. I am on the record as saying that the stock market had to make a correction, had to come down. And I'm on the record saying that when that happened, card prices would probably come down too. Not probably, they will. I'm on the record for that. Okay, guys, I got a few things I want to show you. Okay, first, I had shown you this arena card that I just learned about, that I got the Clemente. If you watch my videos, you've probably seen this a couple times. I did add two more. I added the Hank Aaron. And these two are actually still in plastic, although some of it's opened up, but most of the plastic is still on these. So you get this Hank Aaron, and then this Lou Brock. Now, these predated my visits to the stadium, when I first started going to games. So I really don't know anything about them. But you can see there's two different types. The Lou Brock doesn't have the circle, like the Clemente and the Aaron. So I'm not sure why that is, if they were different years. Nobody really seems to know much about these. So if you do, let me know. All right, so if you happen to watch the video I did, sitting on my dad's back porch and just asking him about old players and his memories and stuff, he still remembers all these old games. Once in a while, he'll get a year, he'll be a year off. I think he makes mention of 1966 in that video where it was actually 1965. But for the most part, he nails it. Still has the memory of the games. And he was talking about when Benny Daniels of the Pirates, he was a pitcher. He was throwing at a ball player for the Cardinals, and the Cardinals ball player would throw the bat across the mound on the next pitch, and then he'd throw at him again, and then the bat went flying, and they got thrown out. And he couldn't remember the name of the Cardinal. Well, it was Don Blasingame. And he told me that if I didn't, he told me on that video, if I never heard of him, what kind of baseball fan am I? And that's how my dad is. My dad, and he used to have all kind of sayings and stuff. Every time I tell him I wished something, he would say, well, wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster. He used to call Farrah Fawcett, Sarah Spigot. But my dad, he was just no holds bar. He'd tell you what's on his mind. And when I was little, and some of you guys will remember this, so before cable, I had 3 channels. And before cable, this is so ridiculous. We had one of those rotary things where you turn and it turns the antenna on the rooftop. And so we had an antenna that it was on a pole that came down the side of the house. And our rotor broke. And my father would make me go out, and he'd open up the door, and I'd have to turn it by hand. And I'm a little kid. And then he'd go, no, too far. No, go back. And he would do this. And I remember my neighbor came over one day, and it was freezing cold in Pittsburgh, snow, and my little hands are sticking to the metal. And my neighbor, who was a friend of ours, came over, and he's like, I'm calling child services on you, what you're doing to this kid. But that's the way my dad was. So I had to get a 1956 Don Blasingame. And I got this card, and it's just a cool looking card, and I got it cheap, and it's the 1934 Goudey, John Stone. Now, nothing super notable about him. He was an outfielder, played for 11 seasons, batted over 307 of those 11 seasons, and had a lifetime batting average of .310. So a solid hitter, but just a really cool looking card. I got this, another Calby. I've gotten several of these lately, Sadaharu O. I don't know, this is a cool looking card showing the way he held that bat. I find it interesting that well, let me back up. I find it interesting that, when you're growing up, they taught you to choke up on the bat to be able to control it more, and be more of you know, a line hitter, a singles hitter, that kind of thing. They usually would do it for the weaker kids. But don't you find it interesting that the all-time home run king in Major League Baseball and the all-time home run king in Japanese baseball both choked up on the bat? I find that interesting. Then I showed a Joe Judge, not on my last video, and I got another Joe Judge. And this is a little set that I have been slowly putting together. And it is the, let's see, what year is it? 1923, W572. These were little cutout strip cards. And they're blank back. Not so super easy to find. So I have, you know, when I get a new card, I'm sure you're the same way, especially of a set you only have a few cards of. Why not look at the ones you already have as you're putting this away with them? So here's the Trish Speaker. Here's the Pie Trainer. And they've used this image for other cards I've seen. Here is Bob Veach. Derek Hardball Crazy turned me on to him. Here's Jesse Barnes. And most of the ones I have are raw from back in the day. Here's Babe Ruth. Here's Grover Alexander. Frankie Frisch. It's a pretty popular pose of his, common pose of his. Joe Bush. I think they called him Bullet Joe Bush. Bib Falk. Doesn't have a lot of cards. Really cool looking one there. And Tom Zachary. And who knows Tom Zachary's claim to fame? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? He gave up Babe Ruth's 60th in 1927. And since I gave that nickname, I forgot his nickname was Rocky. Don't know why. So I have a very rare card coming. And when I say rare, I mean Dave Blue Jacket 66 rare. He told me I should get one. And when Dave speaks, I listen. So, man, I got one. And it's funny. I bought this card off of eBay, and there's the seller. I guess he's an older guy selling off his collection, and he puts right in the description. It reminded me of myself. He's like, I'm old. I don't send cards in for grading. These are real. They're from my lifelong collection. And he just puts it right in the description. I find that so funny because nowadays, if a card's not graded, it's near impossible to sell it. Everybody thinks all these cards are fake and trimmed and altered. People make them in their basement, whatever. So it's really hard to sell ungraded cards these days. I mean, you can, you'll pay more for a 2 or a 3 than a really sharp raw one. So I still like to buy the raw. I was really mesmerized at the National with how many raw vintage cards were being sold. And the first thing that hit me, the first thing that crossed my mind was grading's just gotten too expensive. And even maybe they just picked some of these collections up, for the National. They were out buying them, and grading takes so long they'd never get them back in time too. That could be. But my first thought was it's just too much money to grade them because there becomes a point where you have to buy the card, and then you have to send it off for grading and all that and pay for that. And then you have to sell it at a profit. Well, there becomes a point where, if it's not 9s, 10s, that profit margin's not there. It doesn't make sense. If you have a, like this card, even in a 10, I don't know. Are people going to pay much for it? Most people never heard of him. I didn't hear about him until my dad. Cardinal fans probably know him. But, if it's in a 3 or a 4, why grade it? You're not going to be able to sell it for what you paid to grade it for. So it's just an interesting dynamic. Of course, anybody that buys these cards raw can send them in on their own. So when I pass away, I suspect my family will have to turn them over to a auction house, and the auction house will have to have them graded because, or I'll just freaking donate them to somebody. I'll donate them. Nobody wants to buy them. Don't care. Or I'll bring them to me in my grave, maybe. I'll just get a big U-Haul and dig an extra big ditch. Man, I'm rambling on today, aren't I? Okay, guys. Thanks for watching.